Mass Effect 3 was my #1 game of 2012, which shouldn't come as a surprise for anybody who knows me. I'm a huge Mass Effect fan. I have shirts, hoodies, toys, comic books, lithographs. I bought the collector's editions of the games, and I bought the games twice for Xbox and PC. I love Mass Effect. When the first game came out in 2007, I had just bought my house here with my boyfriend, and I remember being absolutely floored by the time the end credits rolled. I immediately called my sister and I was like, "Oh my god, Ari, you have to play this game." And then I went back for a second playthrough, and a third, and a fourth. All told, I played that game 6 times. The next one came out in 2010, and I felt like a kid on Christmas Eve waiting for the mailman to come. I made myself sick with anticipation, like I was nauseous, physically ill. But once I had it in my hands, I stayed up for 30 hours straight because I couldn't stop playing. I had to beat it. I played that one 8 times because I wanted to see all of the different romances, and in my opinion, Garrus was the best one. Then came the third and final chapter of my Shepard saga, and I was so excited. I couldn't wait to pop the disc into my Xbox. Unfortunately, somehow my original Shepard file got lost. I think it was because we switched Xboxes twice in between, so it happens, you know. So I had to start from scratch, and it kind of worked out. I've played through the third game now 4 times. I just finished my Renegade playthrough, and I've done it twice on each platform. The evolution of the gameplay since 2007 is pretty amazing. You can really tell in the first game that they didn't know what they were doing, because it was the first time they'd worked with the Unreal Engine, and also their lack of funds. The combat was clunky and slow. It was something you suffered through just to get to the next dialogue. The side quests were pretty cut and dry, but there were a couple standout ones. The writing was great, the voice acting was great, and I remember wishing that Garrus was romanceable back then because he was by far the most interesting character on your squad. But I was pretty happy with Kaidan because to me he was just Karth 2.0. The second game was much improved because BioWare was bought by EA, and then they had a lot more funding, and it really showed. The game was polished. The combat was much improved. They added the cover mechanic and heavy weapons, which was my personal favorite, and also the ability to vault over objects. I missed having the heavy weapons in the third game. The shooting was no longer something that you had to force yourself to suffer through. It was something that added to the overall fun of the game. Garrus also became a romance option, so I dropped Kaidan like a bad habit. The third game's combat was excellent, nearly flawless. I find myself having a hard time going back and playing through the other 2 games now because I keep wanting to do combat rolls and I can't do that, and then I get frustrated. The third game did have its flaws, however. The one that irked me the most was the removal of one of the dialogue options. In the previous games, you always had 3 options. It was Paragon, Neutral, and Renegade, and then you had your special Paragon and Renegade options when applicable. Unfortunately, they saw fit to remove the Neutral option altogether, and that really bothered me. It was jarring, and it was something that I didn't get over until the Tuchanka mission. Another was animations. Female Shepard's new run was just stupid. It was like, herp derp, me go run. I also had a dress for casual wear for Female Shepard, but she kind of just sat there with her legs splayed open, flashing her vag at everyone around her. She was like, "Hey, here's my vagina, deal with it." She's a classy lady. The music in all 3 games was phenomenal, but I really noticed the lack of Sam Hulick in the second game. I was happy to have him back for the third, obviously. No one does sci-fi quite like him. Jack Wall went a more orchestral route in the second game, and I felt like it could have used a little Hulick magic. I remember the first time my Shepard became a Spectre, and the Spectre Induction music kicked in, and I was like, wow. This has awesome music. All 3 albums are a regular part of my playlist, but I do have favorites from each. The main theme from the first, Garrus' theme from the second, and Mars from the third. The credit song for the first game, which was M4 Part 2 by Faunts, is one of my favorite songs of all time. I was kind of disappointed that it wasn't used again in the second game, but then I was pleasantly surprised when the third game's credits came on and there was a brand new Faunts song. Another thing I wanted to touch on really quick was the multiplayer, which was a lot of fun. They've added a lot of different content since it came out originally. There's new classes, new guns, new races, new maps. It's all free. I'm sure they'll probably start charging for multiplayer content in the future, but all the stuff that's out right now is free. I have 2 friends that I play with regularly, and we try to hit every N7 weekend that we can, and it's really, really fun, and you should give it a try if you haven't yet. And now for the ending, because you can't talk about Mass Effect without talking about the oh-so-controversial ending. People who don't even know what Mass Effect is know about the ending because so many people hated it. But I was one of the few people who was satisfied with how the game ended originally, and I think it was perhaps because I felt like the whole game was the end, so I got to see the culmination of my years of work and choice paying off throughout the whole game. I got to say goodbye to all of the characters that I had come to know and love. So when I got to the Catalyst, I wasn't surprised or upset. It didn't feel abrupt to me, and it did fit very well within the universe, I felt. I do wish that Leviathan had been a part of the base game, because I think that if it had, a lot of people's issues with how the game ended would have been a non-issue. The DLC explained a lot of the motives behind the Catalyst and the Reapers, and I think that the backlash would have been greatly lessened. People would have always been angry though, because the game had to end, and nobody wanted the game to end. I picked Synthesis because it fit what my Shepard had been trying to achieve all along. Peace and harmony between organic and synthetic life. I was sad, I was really sad. But I was also left with a feeling of hope, because I wasn't in the camp that assumed that no relays equaled dead galaxy. The way I saw it, all of the galaxies best and brightest were now orbiting above Earth, so there was no way in hell that they weren't going to figure out a way to get home. And with the Quarian live ships and Earth to grow food, the matter of starvation was a non-issue. Everything was going to be alright, and they could build new relays, because if the Protheans could build a new relay, so could they. I didn't feel like the extended cut was really necessary, but I was happy to have it. More Mass Effect is always a good thing, and the extra scenes with your love interest, which was Garrus in my case, were more than welcome. The Mass Effect series is BioWare's crowning achievement, and I cannot wait to see where they take the series in the future, and I hope one day to be a part of the team. Don't forget to like and subscribe below. We release new videos every week. Next week, I'll be talking about wolf dogs.